years. You're also a professor of Islamic history at Al Akhwan University in Ifrane, Morocco. But prior to this, you, like I was talking to you recently, you have been for 2 years as again the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty at the Habib University, Karachi. I see that you actually a scholar of, and that was very interesting that you're a scholar of, I didn't know that's scholar of Islamic religious and social history in the medieval period. And you actually earned your MA and PhD in Near Eastern Studies from Princeton University and BA in History from the Johns Hopkins University. You have served in different places, and I was actually the longest in Druze University from 1991 to 2018. And then you have moved on to Yale and American University in Cairo. That interested me because that's again closer to home. And I've been to the American University, Cairo, but perhaps it was in a different time period. And I see that the book, one of the books that you have written is in the vicinity of the righteous, the ziyarah and which is the ziyarat, what we call it in Urdu, and the veneration of Muslim saints in the late medieval Egypt. And I was quite, thrilled because in Egypt, there's a lot of ziyarah, where my son, actually, the elder one, is right now in Cairo. And I was telling him, and I said, tell me, I have very little time, so I could go to these sites and these shrines. And so there you are. And I just finished talking to him. And so I was looking at this book, and perhaps that's something that's would interest many of us. The university that you are heading right now was founded in 1993, and at a very early age, I think very recently you have got your NECE accreditation, and that's also something that interests us because we would perhaps like to go that path as well. And I think Dr. Trimble might say a bit more about that, and that's something we could learn from you as well. And so without much ado, over to you. We would like to know how you have in your, and I know you are new here, but still, how is the Al Akhwan University sort of straddling American heritage and Arab culture in its education system? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Rukhsana, and greetings to Doug, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your workshop today. Can everybody hear me? I want to make sure that we're okay. Yes. In terms of very good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think you're not, I don't think you're only interested in NECE accreditation. I think you're well on the road to getting it. I met Doug and somebody else, I think, last year at the NECE annual meeting, and we hope to meet more friends from FCC there also. And it's a really great honor to be here. I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen, if that's okay. I don't know if any special permissions are needed to do that, but I do have a little presentation, if I may. Let's see. I think you're seeing it now on your screen. I'm going to see if I can. Yes. I'm going to see if I could start my slideshow. Yeah, you're seeing it good. I see a hand raised. I don't know if that's a problem with the technical things or.
No, these are hands that probably should go down. They know that they have to ask questions later on.
Very good. Well, great. Thanks, Rukhsana. Yeah. And let me just say that I had, it was actually almost 3 years I was in Pakistan, in Karachi, and my departure was not of my own choice. Liberal arts colleges sometimes have complicated relationships with governments, and I and several other Habib faculty ended up as exiles from Pakistan.
I'm so sorry.
Due to that situation, but that's another story for another day. I'm thrilled to be here. I was thrilled to be in Karachi as well. I had a wonderful nearly 3 years there. I'm busy now attracting many Pakistani faculty and colleagues here to Morocco. I'm not rating FCC and I'm not rating Habib, but I did recently was able to attract the former dean at Indus Valley College, Dr. Asma Abbas, who's with us now as our dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. So, and I have a number of wonderful, wonderful colleagues here from South Asia. So we're hoping to start a great biryani restaurant at some point in the Atlas Mountains. But anyway, so let me get started, and I'd like to, my presentation is really about the future of the liberal arts in a VUCA world. And I'm going to start by answering the question, what exactly does VUCA mean? First of all, it describes the world that I think we now live in. Many of you may be familiar with this term, but some of you may not be familiar with it. And it's an acronym that stands for a world that is volatile, a world that is uncertain, a world that is complex, and a world that is ambiguous. And in at the end of the second decade of the 21st century, we found ourselves in the grips of a major global pandemic. And we're aware of the rapid change that is underway in this world. I personally believe that what we're witnessing is, as a historian, I believe that what we're really witnessing is the crossing over into a new historical epoch, is what I would say. So for about 50,000 years, human beings were in a sort of hunter-gatherer stage. And about 7,000 years ago, there was an agrarian revolution, and we lived in the agrarian age. And about 1850, we crossed into another age, which we knew as the industrial age. And then sometime around 1995, I believe that we actually crossed into yet another age, which is the digital age, or the internet age, whatever you would like to call it. I usually call it the digital age, but I believe that we crossed over into a new world. And that new world has transformed virtually every aspect of human life. Now, educational institutions are remarkably conservative, and they're never really usually leaders in terms of change. They're usually laggards, although many of the ideas that transform the world come out of the academy. In terms of how we organize ourselves as institutions, we're remarkably conservative, and things change very, very slowly. So we tend to follow change rather than lead it. If you think the whole idea of a summer break, where does that come from? That comes from the agrarian age. People had to go out and sow crops and then harvest crops and so forth. And so we're even now, all through the industrial age, we lived at a time when we retained certain features because we were used to it, and we didn't really want to change it. And that will probably be true in this new age as well. But there are implications for this new age that we live in that we need to pay attention to. And this is not new. The kind of higher education has faced similar challenges when we passed from the agrarian age into the industrial age. Now we're passing from the industrial age into the digital age. And each age has new needs. And so that's what I think the challenge of all education, higher education in the world today is, that we have to make sure that we're relevant in the 21st century. And this affects not only liberal arts institutions, but all institutions. If you're not relevant, if you're offering a product, I'll come to this in a minute, if you're offering a product at a very high price point with no relevance, that's not where you want to be. In economics, that you're taught very quickly that if you're in that quadrant, no value and very expensive, very few people are going to purchase your product. So that's something we have to bear in mind. Now let's talk a little bit about what does the term liberal arts even mean, because I'm not sure everybody is totally. I've encountered many students in North America and South Asia and now in Africa who say, why would I want a liberal arts education? I'm not liberal. And so we have to sort of explain what this term means. The term comes from Latin originally, liberalis artes, or artes liberales, which means the arts that are needed by free people. So liberalis means free, not liberal in the political sense of liberal versus conservative. And it's described as an education that is given to, in the Roman Empire, was given to free men and members of the upper classes, i.e. citizens of Rome. It involved training the mind in certain arts that were deemed essential for free men. And I do mean men here. In that period, that they were only talking about men. And these arts included grammar, logic, geometry, and so forth. The lower classes were to be educated in the servile arts. So it was the servile arts versus the liberal arts, the arts of free people versus the arts of servile people. And those servile arts were considered the mechanical or occupational arts in nature. And this was itself an extension of the ancient Greek idea that inquiry began with a desire for a universal understanding. In the classical and medieval worlds, these liberal arts consisted of 7 subjects that were divided into 2 groups. First, the foundational layer was called the trivium, meaning 3, which consisted of the following subjects: grammar, logic, rhetoric, and then to which were added a second layer in classical education, which was known as the quadrivium, 4, which included the 4 subjects of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And in the classical world, and I would argue that we have to remember that, because sometimes people say, oh, the classical world is the that we are in the West, the Western tradition is the heir of the classical heritage. But of course, those of us who live and work in the Islamic world know that there were 2 heirs to the classical world of ancient Greece and Rome. And I would argue that the first heir was actually not the Western world, but was the Islamic world, which inherited this vast expanse of the Mediterranean world first. And we know that Islam didn't just inherit it, but the Islamic world didn't inherit it, but it also expanded tremendously upon it. And what the West was really the heir of was the combination of the classical tradition and the Islamic tradition as well. So I would argue that the Islamic world is equally every bit as much an inheritor of the classical tradition as the Western world is. So I don't believe that this idea of the liberal arts is just a Western concept. I believe it's very much part of the Islamic tradition as well. Now, the point I want to make here is that I've shown you now what the 7 classical subjects of a liberal arts education were. That's clearly not what is the case today. These subjects are still important, but there's many more subjects. And the point I want to make is that the idea of liberal arts education is a very fluid concept, and it has always been a very fluid concept. It's something that really changes according to place and according to time, but there are certain elements and aspects of it that are eternal, I'll say. And it's this idea of what I'll call it's an education that it consists of both great breadth, which is the horizontal. If we think of a T structure, it consists of great breadth, but also great depth in a certain area. So students study, for example, computer science, or they can study business administration, or they can study philosophy or history. But what we want is them to get great depth in a certain area, but also a lot of breadth in their educational experience. And so I would argue that artes liberales, liberal arts, is today very much the same in concept, that it was an elite kind of educational system in the classical world, and in a sense, it still is an elite kind of educational system. We have to remember that only about 6% of the world's population can claim any kind of a university education. When you focus on a liberal arts education, it's a very, very small fragment of 1% of the world's population. So we really are talking about a very elite kind of educational system, as it has always been. In the United States itself, less than 2% of American students really have this kind of experience that we're talking about at a place like FCC or Habib or Al Akhawain. Very, very small proportion of students. And I try to make our students here, as I did at Habib, very much aware of how privileged they are in a global context to have this kind of an educational opportunity. And they should be very grateful to their parents and their families who make it possible, as well as to the many donors who help support scholarships and fellowships that make this possible as well. So this is a little background of what the liberal arts, where the term comes from, what it means. And as I said, it's a flexible concept. And it's important to understand that it's not a trademark. It is endowed with different qualities. If you look at liberal arts institutions all across the world, you will find that they define it a little differently in their own context. I'm pretty sure that FCC and Akhawain have many similar aspects, the idea of breadth as well as depth, the combination, and there are things like a general education program, or at Habib, we had a core program, which consists of, it can vary anywhere from sort of 20 to 25% to upwards of 40% of the curriculum or more. And that is that idea of developing breadth as well as depth. In other words, we believe that engineers who study poetry are better engineers. Poets who study engineering are better poets, and so forth, because it stretches, this kind of educational system stretches the mind in many different ways. And now this will bring me back to my real theme here of the liberal arts in a VUCA world, because I believe that today that this kind of educational system is perfectly suited for the world that we live in, which is very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. For example, how do you prepare for a world in which your students are likely to have somewhere between 8 and 11 different careers over the course of their lifetime? Not jobs, but actual different careers. And many of those careers don't even exist today. So how are they to prepare for that kind of world? The students are entering our freshman class this year. When they were born, a company called Facebook, now Meta, didn't even exist. And so this is the world that we live in and that our students live in. It's a world of rapid change. It's a world of iteration and so forth. And so how do you prepare a world, students for a world like that? And we believe, as I think you do, that the best way to prepare them is to give them very flexible minds that are able to adapt to this kind of rapid change. So let me start with some key assumptions I have about the world that we currently live in. And the first really assumption I want to start with is that this acronym VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, is an apt description for the world that we live in. There may be some who don't feel that's correct, but I think those of us who've just come through a global pandemic realize that it absolutely is this kind of a world. My second assumption is that the underlying cause of the VUCA character of our world is this historic transition from the late industrial to the early digital age. Many people think that this is just a pandemic that we've been going through, it will pass. I do not believe that the pandemic is the cause of any of the changes we're seeing. I believe the pandemic was an accelerator of a process that began at least 25 years ago or more. So my third assumption is that higher education globally is experiencing considerable stress right now because it is not yet well configured to offer the kind of education that is suited for this new age that we live in. I believe this is a temporary phenomenon. I believe it happened also when the world passed from the agrarian into the industrial age, that higher education faced very similar challenges to what it faces today. I believe it survived and it transformed itself into a kind of education that was suitable to the industrial age, that was no longer whereas an agrarian age education would not have been suitable for the industrial age, that the similar kind of transformation is taking place now. And my fourth assumption is that despite this current mismatch between needs and modalities, a rigorous liberal arts education has never been more needed or more suited to global needs than it is at present. My fifth assumption is that muddling through the current transition won't work, that real and substantive change is needed in how we organize and deliver higher education. My sixth assumption, if I can get this to here, okay, is that although not all institutions are going to succeed, that agile, and what I'm going to call agile institutions, will not only adapt, but they will thrive in this new digital age. Sorry, there's a little lag in my computer here. My seventh assumption is that every crisis is full of opportunities, at least for those who seek them out and exploit them. I believe that in terms of higher education, we are in a moment of crisis because of the fact that we're still offering an obsolete product at a very high price point. So that's the crisis I believe that we live in at the moment. And then finally, if I can get here we go. Sorry. My eighth assumption is that moments of profound crisis present these rare and precious opportunities for agile institutions to make a kind of quantum leap or jump forward. So I think we're living in a very special moment where places like FCC and Akhawain and Habib and so forth, if they recognize the opportunity, are able to make tremendous leaps forward. So let me just show you to prove that I'm not living in an illusion of some sort. Here's a series of books that I think from my own bookshelf that sort of set the tone here. First one, The Academy in Crisis, Campus Meltdown, Crisis in Higher Education, Ivory Tower Blues, A University System in Crisis, College is in Crisis. You start to get the theme. The Breakdown of Higher Education, Ground Zero, Crisis in Higher Education, Reconstructing Alma Mater, The Coming Crisis in Higher Education, A Blueprint for Reform. Enough, the college cost crisis, right? Is college worth it? Is college worth the cost? Ivory Tower. And then my own personal favorite, The End of College. This is a world in which colleges, this new world that we've transitioned into or are transitioning into, is a world where colleges will only be one purveyor of certification for education. We live in this new world where high cost and questionable efficacy is a very, very bad mix. Here's a quote from Flex Jobs: shifting norms for some organizations, proving that you can do work is enough to get you the job without a degree. Recently, many leading companies have changed their mindset about requiring degrees, including Google, Netflix, Meta, Tesla, IBM, Penguin, Random House, Bank of America, Hilton, and Apple. In fact, nearly half of Apple's US workforce includes people without four-year degrees. So this is the world that we're entering. And I've got, I think we have to sort of look at sort of a SWOT analysis of the liberal arts is the world that we're in. The way I would do it is I would look at our strengths, which is that our core product, a vibrant and contextually appropriate liberal arts education designed for the 21st century, offers exceptional preparation for today's VUCA world, and is actually a really good value proposition. Our weakness is that very few liberal arts institutions today globally are actually offering an education that is well suited to the digital age. Most are offering a now obsolete education that was suited for the industrial age in which all of us were trained at a very high price point. And that's what I think the market is questioning the value of that product at the moment. The opportunity, I think, is that institutions that recognize the tremendous value proposition of a well-designed digital age liberal arts education and organize themselves to deliver it effectively will thrive in this VUCA world of the 21st century. And finally, the threat is the failure of liberal arts institutions to adapt successfully to the digital age in a way that will convince both employers and families that the significant investment represented by higher education is not worth it, and students will seek alternative training, such as specialized certificate programs offered by Amazon Web Services or Google or whatever. Because as we saw in the case of Apple, many leading companies today are deciding that are hiring people without a four-year college degree, and so we have to pay attention to that. I think the 5 key challenges that we face are that institutions of higher learning, as I said, are historically very resistant to structural change. People are by nature, as a species, we are very conservative. We don't like change very much. I think our second challenge is our deliberative and decision-making processes in higher education are extremely slow. I'm sure that Doug empathizes with this, waiting for committees to make decisions and faculty meetings to happen. It just takes forever to get things done. And yet we live in a world that is truly in crisis, I believe. Our third challenge is that too many faculty, I think, don't grasp the magnitude of the challenge. They don't grasp the nature of the moment that we're living in, or the extent of the change that's required to adapt to this new digital age that I believe we live in. Our fourth challenge, I think, is that higher education is too expensive. For many families, it's the single largest investment they will ever make. And of course, our fifth challenge is a growing number of leading employers, we've said, are questioning the value of a college degree at all. And to sort of prove this point, I would offer you this headline, which I believe says it all. So this was a headline: Peter Thiel will give you $100,000 American not to go to college, right? And that's been going on now for a decade, his Thiel Fellows program. So this is the world that we live in, and we need to wake up and recognize that there are people out there. Peter Thiel, if you don't know, is the founder and owner of PayPal. He's a very wealthy man who himself benefited from a Stanford University undergraduate degree in philosophy. But he's now paying students $100,000 not to go to college. So I think that that's the world we need to recognize that we live in. So how can higher ed respond to this reality? And as I said, I think there's sort of 6 key strategies that we can pursue. The first one is to ensure that the programs that we offer are both versatile and are relevant. Secondly, to ensure that we are actually delivering the skills and qualities that we promise that we're delivering. And the next strategy is to link classroom learning with experiential hands-on learning. I think that's really critically important today. Fourth strategy is to ensure that students develop essential transferable skills, and I'll come back to what this means in a minute. The fifth strategy is to connect co-curricular learning to classroom learning via a good co-curricular transcript, which I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. That we recognize, in other words, that learning doesn't just take place in a classroom. It takes place across the entire plane of the undergraduate experience. Student life needs to be very, very closely intertwined with, we can't have a world in which we have student life over here and classroom academics over here. We have to see the experience as totally intertwined for students because that's how they experience it. And then as a sixth strategy, we need to develop, I think, a good electronic portfolio system for students to curate and show their work. So if you think about it for a moment, in the industrial world, students had two artifacts of their undergraduate education. They had an academic transcript to show, and they had a diploma to show. I think in this new world, they need at least two more artifacts of their undergraduate education. One of them is this co-curricular or metacurricular transcript, which shows what they've learned outside of the classroom in their college experience. Things like leadership, things like risk-taking, all kinds of things that they learn outside of the classroom. And then if they have an e-portfolio in which they can exhibit to their potential employers in the future what their best work has been, not in the just as a final product, but across the 4 years of their undergraduate experience. Because if a future employer can look not only at the quality of the work, but at the growth of the student over a 4-year period, then they have something that they can say, oh, if that student moved from point A to point B over the 4 years of their college education, I know, I can see what they could do if once I get them and train them in the specific skills that I need them to do. So now, if we put all these pieces together to build a brighter future for the liberal arts, I think it starts with a culture of assessment. And this is a word that a lot of faculty hate to hear. I remember when I first heard about assessment, I shook my head and I said, I do assessment, it's called grading. But that's not really what assessment's all about. And I know as FCC goes through accreditation with NETCHI, this is something that's becoming increasingly important. And the question faculty need to ask themselves is, what am I trying to accomplish? And how do I know if I'm accomplishing it? And that's why I was pointing to earlier that universities and colleges really need to prove that they are achieving what they are claiming to offer their students. Second, we need buy-in. We need faculty to understand the moment we're living in and to act accordingly, to recognize that we're living in a very, very dynamic inflection point in the history of higher education. We need to customize our programs. We need programs that will really meet needs, and customization has become a very, very important thing. We need to develop design thinking and other kinds of agile methods. Those of you who may have visited Habib University know that they have a design thinking lab. I believe it's the first one that was created in Pakistan. Many companies in Pakistan are now creating their own design thinking labs. But it's an agile technology that is very, very important, a methodology that's very, very important for this new age that we live in. And then I think we need to educate for the 21st century. And what I mean by that is really these transferable skills that students can take and use no matter what they do. And design thinking is one of those. If you learn how to do design thinking, I don't care if you're an engineer or if you're a banker or if you're whatever you're doing, you can use this technique and methodology. And this brings me to the essential occupational skills of the 21st century. A lot of work has been done over the last 2 decades on identifying what are these skills of the 21st century. There are a number of very important studies that talk about this. I'll just quickly go over them. Cognitive skills, which include things like performance, creativity, innovation, problem solving, decision making, research and inquiry, information, and quantitative literacy. Metacognitive skills, self-direction, initiative, motivation, persistence, skills development, and internships. Personal skills like responsibility, accountability, ethics, moral decision-making, precision and accuracy, positive risk-taking, intellectual openness, interpersonal skills like leadership, emotional intelligence, empathy, teamwork, and collaboration, conflict resolution, and communication, critical awareness, health and wellness, environmental awareness. We know that there's an environmental crisis that the world is facing. The survival of our own species depends on people understanding this. Financial and economic literacy is also critically important. Finally, global awareness. Our students need to be globally engaged. They need cross-cultural awareness and competence. They need language and civic engagement skills as well. These are all things that they learn both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. This is very quickly, just want to show you a transcript we were working on at Habib University. We're working on a very similar one here now, which is, so students would go out with an academic transcript, and they would go out with this co-curricular transcript, because more and more employers are looking for, they want to see what students can do besides their academic transcript. So this is a way where we're trying to document the kinds of experiences we know that students have had that speak to these very, very important skills that students have developed in college, but not necessarily in the classroom. So what will the organizational future of the students and of work look like in the 21st century? This is from a McKinsey report, McKinsey Associates report, that shows a classical waterfall top-down hierarchical management chart that defined the industrial age. Next to it, you'll see a circle, and inside the circle, you'll see 5 other circles with little dots inside of them. This is what an agile management chart looks like. Management is now at the center of that chart, not at the top of it. And you have highly autonomous teams that are working. This is a world of 1.0, 1.2, 2.0, 2.3, 4.0. This is a world of rapid iteration and change. And this is what an agile management chart looks like. This is the kind of management chart that our students are going to be working in the 21st century. So we need to stop training them for this kind of a structure, and we need to start training them in the skills that are needed for this kind of management structure, which is the kind of structure that they're going to be living in the 21st century. That's what I mean. If we're offering students training in this kind of a world, it won't help them in this kind of world, which is what they're actually going to be living in. So I've gone a little over my time, but I'd like to offer you a quick, there's some other new books that are coming out that I'd urge you to read and get. The New Education by Kathy Davidson talks about all of this. She talks about the transition from the agrarian into the industrial, a fascinating first chapter, from the agrarian to the industrial age, and then where do we go from there? The Fuzzy and the Techie, and Why the Liberal Arts Will Rule the Digital World, I think is a wonderful book. I urge you to read it. Alternative Universities, Speculative Design for Innovation in Higher Education, the Post-Pandemic Liberal Arts College, a Manifesto for Reinvention, and Stephen Denning's The Age of Agile, which is another word that's used to talk about this new age that we live in. And change, I think, is urgently needed, but successful change will require experienced leadership in tune with context. This is another cartoon that I'm sure Doug will resonate with. You've heard the American or the English expression herding cats. Well, this is a cartoon that says, at least I'm not managing change in higher education or education. So anyway, I'll stop at this point and thank you all very much for listening.
Yeah, Chris, listening to you, I realized you really have given us a roadmap going forward, and that's what we are doing, our new leadership at FCs right now, thinking about all those things, and it was very, very fruitful, insightful. I can see the comments coming from our faculty. They are like 217 right now, and they're really excited. There's some very personal comments to me, and they're saying, when are we going to go that path? And I think we are steering towards that path. Shalendra, I apologize. We have overstepped our time, and but perhaps let's look at it this way. We will go along with whatever it takes to finish your PowerPoint. And since we are online, we will love to hear what you have to say and share with us from Lingnan University. Very quickly, your bio, a very brief one actually. Yours was quite long, and I was trying to skim through it. You're the Associate Vice President for Academic Quality Assurance and Internationalization. You're also the Professor and Chair of Lee Shaw-Key, I hope I pronounced that right, of political science. So you are a political economist by training, and you have been in, for the longest time, actually, I think over 20 years, you have been in the University of San Francisco, USA, and then you have come towards the East. And you've also been, you're also a guest speaker at the Fudan University in Shanghai. And you have tons of publications, even I think over 20 in the last 10 years, and many books, recent ones that talk about the crisis, the global crisis, the political economy of various countries, and so on. Lingnan University, like you said, and we all know, and perhaps you'll talk about it, is one of the top 10 I think Southeast Asian liberal arts universities. So over to you without much ado. And we will, of course, we have time, so please don't feel constrained.
Thank you, Rukhsana, and thank you, Chris. I will, recognizing the time constraints, I will keep mine a bit brief and just sort of provide you a quick overview for what we do at Lingnan. So maybe I should share my screen, if possible.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see it.
Yes, we do.
So what I would present in my talk is how we have done liberal arts university at Lingnan University in Hong Kong, where liberal arts education is a rarity and relatively new. So just a quick overview. Chris provided a very nice synopsis of what liberal arts education is. But I think for most of us, what liberal arts is conjures up the traditional big leafy campuses in American universities. These are all private residential colleges. They are well endowed. They have small classes, flexible learning, faculty doing very little teaching, 2 or 3 courses. A lot of emphasis on student interaction. They focus on arts, humanities, social sciences. As I mentioned, some of them have huge endowments and are equivalent to sometimes Club Med. And these are the colleges of the elite. In many other contexts, to do liberal arts, it's not easy because to do liberal arts requires a lot of investment. You need to have small classes. You need to do a lot of things that most universities in many countries cannot. Hong Kong has been an exception because we have a lot of resources. And so what happened in this part of the world, in East Asia? When I talk about East Asia, you're looking at China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. What about, how did liberal arts come here? In large measure, these are very successful economies, high levels of growth, development, transformation in a generation, becoming very wealthy, prosperous societies. So the thinking towards liberal arts happened because these countries reached sort of an inflection point. And the inflection point was, look, we have done really good in economic development. We have good human capital. We have educated and trained our citizens in the traditional careers really well, and they have done well. But we are also afraid of not catching up. We seem to be perpetually behind the United States and Western countries when it comes to innovation, creativity, and all of that. And hence, the conclusion was, well, maybe we will need to develop liberal arts education in this context to provide for that innovation, creativity, thinking outside the box, taking challenges. And so that is where it came from, the idea of liberal arts. But the question is, well, how do you do it? These are non-Western societies. And the model was very simple. We will do liberal arts with Asian characteristics. In the case of Hong Kong, our liberal arts tradition is based on both Western and Chinese tradition. In Korea, it is Korean tradition, Japan, Japanese traditions. So what you have seen over the last 20 years, and at least as long as I've been in Hong Kong, over 10 years, you've seen a proliferation of liberal arts colleges. Lingnan University is one in Hong Kong. But even if you have big elite universities, research universities like Peking University has its Yunpai College. You have Duke Kunshan in Shanghai, which is a sort of a combination of Duke University and a Chinese university. You have International Christian College in Japan, Yonsei University. So there's a whole bunch. And what they had to do, even though all these liberal arts colleges have been created, the challenge has been, well, to do liberal arts requires a shift in thinking, because Asian societies are also very traditional. Education, as Chris has mentioned, requires a lot of investment. Families scrape and save to educate their children. And what they want is an outcome. If you go into traditional careers like engineering, medicine, science, you are given a career path. Liberal arts, well, it's a bit tricky. It is a bit uncertain. Where will you go? Parents need a sort of a certainty. So in a sense, it has been a challenge to sort of sell liberal arts. The success of liberal arts is going to depend on, does it deliver what it promises? As Chris said, you know, this is what liberal arts does. Well, the verdict is still out. Does it? And we shall see. So how do you then combine features of traditional liberal arts education in the Asian context, and at the same time convince both parents and students that this is a path to take? So what have we done at Lingnan? Lingnan is a small liberal arts university in Hong Kong. We have 8 universities in Hong Kong. 3 are top flight research institutions. Other 3 are somewhere in the middle. Lingnan University is a small university. We have around 2,500 undergraduate students and very well financed and supported. In Hong Kong, 20% of high school graduates will get a university place, only 20%. The rest will have to fend for themselves. The best will get a university place, which is highly subsidized, and they would get world-class quality education. So for us at Lingnan was, well, how are we going to do liberal arts education? What would be our guiding philosophy, vision, and ideas? Especially, we are looking at a financial center, the world's major financial center, that is Hong Kong. We have multinational businesses and corporations here. There has been a traditional bias towards sciences, engineering, and medicine. So what we have done is to say, well, this is what liberal arts education in the Hong Kong context will look like. Also, by the way, our faculty, by our UGC, we are ultimately also rated on our research output. So even if we do all these liberal arts for funding, we still have to compete and publish in top, what they call 4-star outlets here in Hong Kong. So it's a very competitive, market-driven place. So we have done well overall, I'm happy to say. We have invested a lot of time and resources. And what we have tried to do is learn from best practices elsewhere. And so the PowerPoint that you have in front of you sort of gives you an indication of some of the things that we have done in terms of what our rankings are. So what have we done? Well, if you look at the key elements of liberal arts education at Lingnan, it is not very different from what you would find in many other places. There's broad-based curriculum, close staff-student relationship. We have fully residential colleges. We have active community service. Our community service is different from sort of the traditional emphasis on service learning, is that we also can provide internship at major corporations and businesses, especially in the financial center, along with the traditional service learning that deals with underprivileged or underperforming areas. We have a strong alumni and community support. So we have, this is something you can all identify with. This is sort of the bread and butter of liberal arts education in different contexts. And so we have done that also at Lingnan. If you look at our liberal arts curriculum, this gives you what it looks like in terms of just breakdown, what students need to do. And once again, it should look very familiar to all of you who are familiar with liberal arts in terms of how our curriculum is designed, what students are required to take. We do emphasize, there's a lot of emphasis on English instruction. Hong Kong is not like Singapore. After the turnover to China, English proficiency has somewhat declined. In large measure, there's greater emphasis on Putonghua. Hong Kong is Cantonese speaking. Putonghua is the Mandarin, is the language of mainland China. So English, if you want to get a good English instruction in Hong Kong, you really need to get, it is a challenge these days. So we have at Lingnan emphasized a lot of emphasis on English instruction. Again, you can see the teaching and learning. Curriculum is what do we teach. So previously it is relatively balanced. Pedagogy, assessment. I'm not going to go into the details of the nitty-gritty of assessment, but in the PowerPoint, if you are interested, you will see how we measure student assessment. And faculty. I think one of the things that we have done, and I'm happy to sort of say this, that I have really emphasized this, is the importance of the faculty, how the faculty needs to be supported. And to do liberal arts education, you just can't sort of say to the faculty, well, this is what you do. They come from their own particular background. They need to get all kinds of support. So we do provide in terms of training, workshops, fund their conferences. Also, equally important, value good teaching. If somebody does good teaching, then it is rewarded and recognized. Even in Hong Kong, where everything is research driven, if a faculty member can demonstrate excellence in teaching, that is appreciated and recognized. You really need to do that if you're going to build good liberal arts curriculum, dedicated, committed faculty. Not all good researchers are good teachers, as we all know. So we have invested a lot in terms of encouraging the faculty to think outside the box, to do cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary teaching, work with other colleagues. And that requires a lot of time and investment on their part. Again, a quick overview about our curriculum. I don't need to go into detail, but you'll get a sense. I'll leave the PowerPoint with you, with the office, so you will be able to, if you so wish, find out the details. Again, I'm just going over it very quickly in terms of what our curriculum is. We have luxury also advantages for digital learning. We have state-of-the-art technology. All the universities have that. And so that has helped us during this COVID crisis. But generally, as Chris mentioned, how to make faculty, if students are going to be digitally savvy, then so the faculty need to learn it too. And faculty need the training, they need the incentive, they need the resources. We, for example, at Lingnan value good teaching to such an extent that if a faculty member is an excellent teacher, excellence in teaching, but good in research, that person will be substantiated, which means will be tenured. At all other universities, you have to have absolutely outstanding research if you're going to get substantiation in Hong Kong, at any Hong Kong university. It's just the norm. But with the exception at Lingnan, to show that for liberal arts education, we will need to emphasize excellence in teaching, and we need to value and cherish and cultivate good teachers. So that's, we have done that. Assessment, we again do all the things that I'm sure all of you do in other contexts. I've already mentioned the emphasis we put on faculty. We have a faculty teaching award scheme that we recognize outstanding good teaching. Because as we all know, when students graduate, what do they normally remember? They remember the experience, a teacher that had an impact on their lives, that transformed their lives. So it also helps with alumni if they recognize good teaching. There's also other professional development opportunities open for teaching. In large measure, is simply because we have resources in Hong Kong to support teachers and faculty members in general. The other important aspect of our liberal arts education, again, echoing Chris, is the importance of internationalization. Hong Kong is a small city state. It's very cosmopolitan, modern, and we recognize that internationalization is very important to get talent. And what it means is that close to 80% of our students, actually it's close to 90% of all our undergraduate students during their 4-year period in Hong Kong at Lingnan will get an opportunity to go abroad. And we are fortunate enough to provide for cover all the cost, travel, accommodation. But generally, our exchange is something anybody can do. Our exchange is based on reciprocity. So, for example, if we have exchange with the student exchange with the Foreman Christian College, it would be you would send 3 or 4 students here on exchange. We will send 3 or 4 students, and there's no cost involved at all. When your students come to Lingnan, we will view them as our students and vice versa. So we have over 350 partner universities around the world where our students can go for a semester-long exchange. And this has really transformed them. I think one of the important things that I have noticed about internationalization, initially I was a bit skeptical about this, that what is the value? Are these students just going and taking a nice vacation when they go abroad? But I think one of the things that perhaps the key aspect that has impressed me is that students who go on exchange come back transformed. They have greater confidence, they have more self-esteem, they have been away in a different context. We try to send our students abroad, not to familiar grounds, not to UK or United States, which is familiar territory, but to countries that are not, the well-trodden grounds. We have sent students to Morocco, to Turkey. Turkey is a popular destination. We would like to send students to Pakistan, but there's always the issue of security. We have sent many students to India. So this internationalization has played a very important role, and we have developed extensive network. And this is a very important component of internationalization of liberal arts education. Again, you can see some of our partners. It also helps in terms of recruitment. I'm always surprised to see students who have come here for exchange may decide to come for graduate education down the road. And if they have a good experience, internationalization works through word of mouth. You really don't need to do much advertisement. If a student had a wonderful experience at your institution, then they generally will talk to their friends, and then there would be regular traffic of students coming. Finally, just to go over it very quickly, we are members of, to be part of this liberal arts institution. We want, as you have, to have a membership in Liberal Arts Forum. We are members of the Global Liberal Arts Alliance, through which I met Rukhsana. We have our own alliance of Asian liberal arts universities, and this is very good in terms of sharing best practices, learning what others are doing, how we can enhance our own. So this is very, very important, and the institution needs to support it. One of the advantages at Lingnan has been that our institution has been sort of supporting this outreach, and you build up a very nice network, which means that you sometimes don't have to reinvent the wheel, because others are doing it, and you can sort of draw upon and strengthen your own curriculum. So those are the advantages of partnership. I won't bore you with our Bachelor of Arts in Global Liberal Arts, but we have the unique aspect of this program is that we were able to have exchange relationship with some of the top universities in the world on reciprocity basis. So if students from this program can go to major universities for exchange, exchange can be based entirely on reciprocity, no questions asked. There's another kind of exchange where you pay top dollar to send your students to Harvard, but this type of exchange is basically cost effective. Any university can do it if you just put in the time and energy, and we have devoted a lot of time and energy to it. Also, English instruction is very important at Lingnan. I won't again go into too much detail. And finally, we are now developing a new school, interdisciplinary studies, in which we are trying to do some of the things that Chris alluded to, sort of those general ideas, those broad themes. Maybe you can't do all of them, but through the School of Interdisciplinary Studies in your own way, you can do some of it. And if you can do some of it, just do them well. You don't have to do everything. In your own world, you can do something. So I think that has been Lingnan's experience. And as a small liberal arts university, we have put in the resources, but most importantly, as part of the senior management, I have been, since I've been here, I must say that generally, you have to work through example. If the senior management is committed to liberal arts, puts in the resources rather than just giving speeches, then the faculty will follow. But if you just lecture them to do this, it's not going to happen. That has been my experience. So institutional leaders can play a very important role. I believe for Lingnan, liberal arts education, as Chris mentioned, is important in a fast, rapidly changing world. The way I like to see it is that what value can we add to students? We are not only going to give them the ability after they get a 4-year degree that they are competitive on the labor market, that they can get into top graduate school, that they can speak well, but also that they need to have a sense of self-esteem, a sense of confidence. And most important, I think, for liberal arts is an ability to listen to others, not sort of away from this entitlement. Look at the problem in the United States. Everybody has the answer. No one is willing to listen to anybody, right? But to be part of liberal arts is to have a certain modesty, a certain humility to say you were wrong and I'm willing to listen. I think if we can build that in our instruction, then I believe we are doing what we're supposed to do. So anyway, Rukhsana, this is my take. The PowerPoint is fairly extensive. Your colleagues are, you are happy to keep it. And if you need any more information, I'll be happy to share. And of course, I look forward to welcoming you in a better time to Hong Kong, and also learn from Pakistan, learn from Lahore, the city of my grandparents someday. Thank you.
Shalendra, it was really amazing to listen to what you're doing at Lingnan to make it a very comprehensive program rooted in your own country, as well as looking outwards. And I think the idea of global studies and School of Interdisciplinary Studies is a remarkable way of going the path, I think, that also partly Chris was talking about. So with both talks, it's been a beautiful 360-degree sort of a perspective where Chris has really focused us on how going forward, we should think of different things that are going to be challenges and how we can sort of navigate that uncertain, that what he calls the VUCA world, and very beautifully, and beautiful talks, both of them. I was wondering if there were any questions, but while there's Altaf Khan, Dean of Humanities. Altaf, will you unmute and please do ask? Ji.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a lot to talk. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Shalendra. So these were wonderful presentations. I think I don't need to say it. Everybody's saying it. If I may ask these brief questions to Chris, if he's still there, and also to Shalendra. Like to Chris, I would like to ask if, like the way I see it, like liberal arts education, like digital humanities and digital era, as Chris said. I think that digital humanities, in my opinion, since I'm from humanities, is really dragging its feet. It's too slow. I don't know much about it, but the things that I know is that digital humanities is still grappling with the idea of digitalize all the written stuff. And I think we are not going into a deeper debate of the transformation of knowledge, that we have a new knowledge system which is incongruous with the way we teach at universities. So that's my question. May I ask a second one from Shalendra? I'll be quick. Shalendra, it was wonderful. You presented the actual happenings the way you are doing in very similar circumstances as we are. And I would really love to know about the School of Interdisciplinary Studies. This is something I would love to have at FCCU. I'm really thankful to many people who said this. So I would like to know, if not yet now, we can communicate later on email, but I would really like to know how it works. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chris, would you like to go first, and then Shalendra can respond to the second question? Yeah, you are unmuted. Sambeem unmuted you. That's amazing. Let me see.
There we go. Now I'm all set.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was trying to unmute and it said the host will not let you unmute. So I think I went on too long. And so the host
Not at all, Chris. It was a joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rukhsana. And Altaf, I think you're absolutely right on the digital humanities question. For those of you who are interested in seeing what the possibilities of the digital humanities are, I would urge you to look at the Stanford University Digital Humanities website, because it's really inspirational to see what a really creative, what creative use is being put to the digital humanities. If you want to see where I think it's going to be going in the future, I would urge you to explore some of the projects in the digital humanities that are available on the Stanford University website. If you just Google Stanford University Digital Humanities, you'll find it very quickly. So, and I'll stop at that point and let Shalendra answer your other question.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, Altaf, you raised a very important question, because as you know, the academic system is still very much structured on the concentration of specific majors as disciplines. And some of these are long traditional, fields of study. And disciplines are distinct. They have distinct methodologies. They ask different questions. They make different assumptions. So doing interdisciplinary work is not easy. It is simply not just integration, but it requires a lot of collaboration between the different faculties. So one of the things we did on campus is to say, in the past we had cross discipline teaching, economists, political scientists, cultural studies, philosophers but it's not the same thing. There was, they just did it because they were interested in doing it. But by creating a sort of a school of interdisciplinary studies, we provide resources and training where interdisciplinary studies and collaboration between stakeholders can become real. Now, so that's one. What about in terms of learning? Through a lot of research done around the world, we all know that students learn better when they deal with topics over which they have a lot more interest, perspectives that interest them, that inspire them. And so how can these diverse forms of knowledge and inquiry, critical thinking can come together? So this is what this interdisciplinary school is all about. Both within our university, we have three faculties: arts, social sciences, and business. We don't have engineering, we don't have medicine, but we have a science unit. So within our faculties, we are trying to sort of create this culture that faculties, if they do across discipline, they would be appreciated, would be recognized, and also with other Hong Kong universities, but also abroad. In a way, it allows us to tap resources that and skills that we may not have. As Chris mentioned, one of a growing area we found even in Hong Kong, in a major city like this, is the questions about ecology and sustainability, aging populations. And this requires, could not be done simply through one discipline, but through interdisciplinary work. So that is what motivated us to do it. And it is not an easy task. It requires a certain amount of commitment, some release time for teaching as faculty develop new courses. But I think in the long run, it would be worth it, because it would truly be interdisciplinary rather than somebody teaching the different sections and leave without much collaboration. We really want our students to have an understanding of philosophy, of just traditional thinking that never has gone out of date. Ideas about justice, rights, liberty, what is it to have a good life? All of those are timeless questions. I think Chris alluded to this earlier in his presentation, and I think this is what we want to embed in this school.
Yeah, I think that's great. I was, if I may interjection, there was, I heard a college president, and I forget the name of the college, and I actually downloaded the video. And she had actually design thinking, Chris, like you were talking about. She had revamped the idea of liberal arts, and she actually started with interdisciplinary themes. So students had to come into the campus and they had to select either a topic, climate change or sustainable development goal of one kind, diversity, all the things, justice, human rights. And then a core curriculum was built around liberal arts concepts with a focus on that. So the interdisciplinarity was introduced from day one. And I thought that was a remarkable, exactly, design thinking about the education. And that's perhaps what's needed in a world of today. I do not see any more hands or questions. May I request our Vice Rector Academics, Dr. Douglas Trimble, to put up his concluding comments to these two talks. And then I would like to invite our rector, who has actually been commenting on the fantastic talks and says he would look forward to the PowerPoints for more study, as to see what you have both said. And so I'll call him for his vote of thanks. Douglas, Dr. Trimble, sorry.
Thank you to Shalendra and to Chris both for these stimulating ideas. You've given us much to think about. When I think about the topic of liberal arts and contextualizing it, I think this was really helpful for us as we think about our context. What I heard is a lot of similarity, and I'm not sure that these things are too radically different than the ideas that we think about in terms of liberal arts, but in terms of how do we implement them and use them, particularly in our context. This was excellent. I think about Rick Detweiler's recent book, The Evidence Liberal Arts Needs, is some good evidence showing in a quantitative way the value of a good liberal arts education. And I really appreciate your unpacking some of the reasons for us of why that liberal arts education is more necessary today than ever. Well, as necessary today as ever. And so it's not something that is going away. And one of the things we've been doing most recently this week is implementing an assessment technology, watermark software that's been really helpful for us. And your comments about the need for assessment has been very well received. And I'd like to boast about my faculty that assessment isn't a dirty word here. I've seen very supportive faculty across the board and a lot of support and excitement and enthusiasm about implementing assessment. Now, the hard work is ahead of us, but we have an excellent foundation that we're building on for that. One of the things that came up over and over again is this the need for excellent teaching and how to recognize excellent teaching. That's part of our rubric in terms of how we assess faculty. But in terms of how the HEC determines promotions, and that's the Higher Education Commission here in Pakistan, it is very much built on seniority, number of years of service, and upon publications. And it does not have teaching as part of that promotion criteria. And this is something that's come up multiple times this week, certainly in these talks, but in other talks as well, that we need to give careful thought. And I'm really, this is something that we'll take forward, this issue of how do we recognize and reward excellent teaching beyond just looking at student course evaluations, which have a place, but they really are a measurement of student satisfaction in the course more than the effectiveness of the teaching in the course. We have a pretty traditional distribution model of liberal for general education, and we are at the perfect time to reconsider that. And I think that as we reconsider what we're doing with liberal arts, with general education, thinking about these themes, these 21st century themes, and about the skills that our faculty, our students need to graduate, not just thinking about do they have courses in all these different areas, but having it more aligned with the themes that that you have been talking about with us this evening here, will help frame that conversation that we have in terms of what are we doing for our general education and how can we best assess that. And then finally, the theme of service learning came up multiple times, and I really appreciate that. We have dabbled with this idea, but we haven't implemented it effectively. And I would love to move that forward because it fits perfectly with our motto, by love, serve one another. But it also fits perfectly with what does it mean to be a liberally educated person and what sort of skills are necessary to really thrive. And so these were some of the thoughts that I had and reflections that I'll be taking forward from your talks. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Trimble. Service learning is much weighted, absolutely. So we look forward to that. Dr. Adgelton, our rector, he has been.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few things at the end. And obviously, thank you for Dr. Rukhsana and her team, her CLT team. Thank you to the VR's office and also the faculty. I think it's been great for all of us to be together. And here's something that, as people have said, is very, very good. And of course, obviously, thanks to our speakers, Chris and Shalendra, really very good. And I think very complimentary in terms of both messages, both presentations. I think were excellent. And as I mentioned, looking forward to reflecting on the slides a bit more afterwards when I'm able to look at them. I guess for our speakers, maybe they saw them, but words like amazing, excellent, impressive, great ideas should be shared with HEC. Both sessions helpful, excellent twin sessions, remarkable. And fascinating and wonderful. So I think it got great reviews in the comment section, and it's always good to see that. I guess things, different things stick out, and Dr. Trimble covered a lot of them. But one of the things that I appreciated was this sort of notion of organizations as machines versus organizations as organisms. And this is something that's been close to my heart for many decades, actually, in other bureaucratic contexts as well. I've told people, and one of the phrases I've used actually is that the work we do is not like we're constructing a building, it's more like we're cultivating a garden. And I reflect on that, and actually over the years, the more I've thought about that, I think it's very good, because constructing a building is obviously important, and you follow the blueprint, but you better follow that blueprint or you're gonna be in trouble. Whereas cultivating the garden has a bit more space. I guess it's a little bit like Voltaire as well in terms of cultivating your own garden, but I think it's got some real space for that creativity, and it's not always straightforward. Events happen, and you have to make those adjustments. I think we're left with a lot of ideas. I think some of them or many of them actually are doable and actionable in our context, in the forming context. Some of them are aspirations we have. Some we're doing in certain areas and can do a better job of it. But that's also what I took from this. And I may finish actually with just a couple of those other quotes that really struck me. One of them was, I guess it was Shalendra's quote, ability to listen to others. Everyone knows they have the answers, not willing to listen to others. And I think in our age, in our time, our wrinkle of time, if you will, on this earth, that is an issue right now, is this inability to listen to others. So I appreciated hearing that one. And I guess another one that was reflected, I think, in both, and I think is actually one of the core aspects of liberal arts education. Certainly flexibility, willing to learn, entertain new ideas, everything else is important. But there is also this sense that was mentioned about there are certain ideas that are timeless. They recur over the centuries. They are maybe have different perspectives on them. But this notion of timeless ideas, I think, is also one that I think is one that I think is important in the liberal arts context. So I've talked about it relatively quickly. I guess it's almost 5:30 now, but I have to say that from my perspective, the CLT team, Dr. Rukhsana, and everybody involved, that I guess to use the American expression of hit home runs, or to use the Pakistan expression of hit a bunch of sixes. But I think it really has been good. And this too has been one of the sessions that I'll leave and I'll be reflecting on this evening and beyond. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Adgelton. Thank you so much. And officially now we close the session But Chris and Shalendra, we're so looking forward to having you here. I wish, I mean, despite what that happened with you in Karachi, Chris, I think don't write Pakistan up, you know. So we look forward to having you here. And Shalendra, you have a great service learning center, actually. It is one of the best that you have in Asia, I know that. And so we have a lot to learn from you as we move on to that path. Our challenge actually is cultural literacy within the country, not a global literacy problem. You know, our students are elite students and they never get to know what's happening on the ground. So perhaps a model of experiential learning rather just a grounding in service learning would be more sound and meaningful for our students here. So that was just a thought, and we'll look forward to learning from both of you. We'll be looking up to your experiences and really, really thankful. And Chris, like I said, Bilal, always when he talks about you has things to say, which I am like, okay, how did I miss meeting Chris? So you have to come because I don't know if we'll be able to come to Morocco. So thank you so much once again. Shalendra, you have to come to Lahore, right? Your bases are here. So we'd love to welcome and host you here. Okay, thank you so much, both of you. I'm truly indebted. Lots of gratitude for your kindness. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Trimble. Thank you so much. So we are done with the sessions, and now you have 2 more sessions tomorrow, right? 3 more. Yeah, I hope to be in one of those sessions tomorrow too. So I'll join you, hopefully. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.